Oh man.
Carol, if
So
you
you got
have,
the article. You
uh,
got the article that I sent you last week where I was right. It
about
showed I was right.
Ascension, I got it. I actually got it linked here. I was gonna possibly put it in chat, but yeah, man, that's
I mean,
I mean, we knew, we both knew it was at the
it's just
employee
one of
level.
those it's just one of those things though, like um the easiest answer is most often the correct answer.
Right.
It's just when you're looking at, especially when you're looking at an organization that size with so many different departments, so many, I mean, what do they have? Thousands of employees, not to mention the contractors and vendors and specialists and ER physician groups, like the surgeons, the anesthesiologists, I mean, you just go down the list. It was always going to be the easiest common denominator, which is the end person. So,
Human
not to
error.
bury the lead, but for anybody who hasn't heard, Ray just put in an article in the chat if you want to take a look at it later. But basically, it looks as though the cause of the ransomware for Ascension is that an employee opened an email from a work device, and that was how they got in. So the
Pretty
good old
wild.
fashioned hijacking.
I'll just put it in chat for you guys.
Yeah. So
Those
I
that weren't
mean,
on last week's webinar, yeah, we talked about Ascension Health. It recently got hacked, and well, at that, or I guess that was last week's session. And during that time frame, yeah, we found out kind of how it happened. We were sort of in the weeds with it, and
yep.
yeah, just at the employee
So I
level.
mean, just jumping right into it, because I mean, one of the main things that you need is not just a strong compliance program, but you need to have a culture of common sense. And if you're anything like me, you know that common sense is a superpower nowadays.
That it
It's not
is.
something that's just given right out of the box, right? So it's not just having policies and procedures where everybody knows where it is, having a company like EPICompliance that can help you out with that stuff. It's not just doing the annual training. It's not just doing the, hey, somebody screwed up, so we're going to use this as a lesson time for everyone involved. Everybody sit down in the lunchroom and let's go over it. It's, hey, how is this stuff happening? Hey, let's not do stupid things. Hey, if we have a company Wi-Fi, another easy one, why is our personal cell phones on the company Wi-Fi? Like it's how do we have those conversations with our team that have a varied, how can I put this, investment, to put it lightly, in the compliance and in the nature of compliance and in the nature of the security of the practice, right? Because healthcare, especially in the US, has the entire gamut in the socioeconomic order in the United States. I mean, you have people that barely know the common language of English in your nursing homes and ALFs. In Florida, it used to be the Cubans, and now it's a bunch of Haitians. That's just the predominant field right now, that we're
Yeah.
seeing that kind of demographic shift. And then you have, your MAs, your front desk personnel that are minimum wage, maybe a little bit more than minimum wage, to your mid levels, to your nurse specialists, your nurse practitioners, your PAs that are upper middle class, and then you have your providers that can go anywhere from being in the same class as the mid levels to the one percenters. So just how do you have that conversation with everyone and make sure that everyone's involved, because you're going to get a different level of engagement. So you can use the carrot or stick a lot of times, right? I mean, um, we can go over the whole, hey, this is how we go and uh, have our policies, have our procedures. If you don't do it and we catch you, you're fired. Okay, that works for some people that are afraid of repercussions, but for those that don't care, they don't care. So, sometimes the carrot works better, right? So how do we incentivize our employees? hey, if there are no issues, I know that a couple of construction companies that I know of down here in Florida, they obviously have bigger OSHA concerns than cybersecurity concerns, but they go and do if there aren't any workers' comp claims for injuries that could have easily been avoided, not
Mhm.
wearing your hard hat when you should be wearing your hard hat. Stupid things, but stupid is as stupid does.
I'll give you some.
So
I'll give you a scenario that recently happened to one of our customers, and they're a larger organization. They have somewhere around 250 to 300 employees.
yep,
They just hired a nurse practitioner,
yep.
and um, I want to say it was the first or second week on the job.
I was gonna ask,
He had
okay.
sent a he was sending a record to a patient, sent it to the wrong patient, and he sent it over a Gmail email, not the work email. So just again,
Now, let's talk about that, right? So, first, that mid-level should know better,
absolutely.
especially nurse practitioners. And I'm only going to give nurse practitioners a hard time with this because in order to be a bloody nurse practitioner, one must become a nurse first.
Yep.
And there are no nurse practitioner programs that I am aware of in the United States that will accept a nurse that has no field experience. So this
Absolutely.
nurse practitioner should have known better. I don't give a crap what age they are. All right. With that
Don't know those
said,
demographics. I didn't ask, but yeah, that was
if,
yeah.
with that said, I mean, the PA you might be able to get away with a little bit better because you can just go straight through college and this could be their first job, that kind of thing. But even still, but the email thing is interesting because depending on the kind of setup that you have with your infrastructure, your cyber infrastructure in the office, if you're using 365, if you're using Google, if you're using nothing, there can be limitations set on not just the kinds of emails sent, but who you're sending them to and different things. So I am not surprised that your larger client experienced this type of a breach because they were like, hey, I need to send this to a patient real fast. This is already annoying that I have to send this to a patient, but I'm going to
Obviously,
do it
I
anyway.
mean
Now my email isn't working to send this crap out. All right, well then screw it. I'm just going to use my personal one and be done with it.
well, that's what it's funny you say that because that's exactly what this person had said why he sent it to that Gmail and obviously ended up sending it to the wrong patient. But ultimately to you know s-
I mean, and you can have all
uh,
the policies and procedures you want.
right.
Hey, before we send anything to a patient, we confirm the DOB. We double check the DOB to make sure that the DOB matches the name and so on and so forth, and make sure that the email we grab from the profile of the patient. But if you're just responding to the patient, which happens more often than you think, patient sends you an email saying, hey, can I get this? All right, cool, let me just get this done and be done with it.
Right.
This is so the problem is that perhaps in that system, like let's be charitable, right? There are certain things that providers get themselves into that perhaps they should not be involved with. Here's an example.
Point.
A provider could be getting emailed directly through the patient portal or messaged through the patient portal in EHR or contacted by whatever, by a specialist, but they shouldn't be wasting company time on sending a record anywhere because you should have an official medical records person. Most offices do. And if you don't have an official medical records person, you know who can do that better than anybody else? Anybody but the provider. Like
Which is to your point, that's kind of what like I said, this person's like 1 or 2 weeks new on a job. Did you not just want to like did you not know somebody to get in touch with to do this for you? Or did you just thought, hey, I'm just gonna do it, Like
well,
what
and so let's back up, right? So there was in the research that I do daily with the consulting firm, and because I like to be ahead of the game in regards to the conversations in regard to mental health, because I am a little bit selfish like that. Um, nationally and statewide. One of the things that I found was that, oh my gosh, the Kaiser Permanente Foundation did a survey, and across the United States, 73% of respondents said that there's too much paperwork involved with the current healthcare system.
Oh, go figure.
I'm shocked that it was only 73%.
Yeah,
Like, are you kidding me right
I'm
now?
thinking more in the 90s.
I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, I bet you the 27% just don't have anything to do
Those were
with
bots.
paperwork,
Those were
with
bots.
the bureaucracy of getting something done
No,
in our
exactly.
current healthcare system.
What?
Now, are there better models? Sure. There's always pros and cons to everything. We're not going to get into that. But it always goes back to the same thing, right? Like, what are the rules? What am I trying to do? And what's the best way to skin that cat? Well, your larger client, I hope, is going to review not just their policy and procedure, because that in that respect is fine. They need to retrain the employee, but perhaps on the prevention side, the HIPAA security officer and the executive team need to look and see, how do we avoid this crap?
Yeah.
How do we avoid? And this is part of the problem with being a security officer now, right? We have to out clever not just the people that are trying to do harm, excuse me, not just the people that are trying to do harm, but also the people that are just trying to get their job done,
Right.
but inadvertently increase the
The
liability
liability.
for the entire practice. So how do we manage this? How do we work this out? So I would honestly be taking a look at, in this case, in the scenario that you just gave, why was the patient contacting the provider directly? Is there somebody that is better for that job of just sending the medical information where it needed to go, you know? I see this a lot with prior authorizations. Okay, well, I need the provider signature for the prior
Mhm.
authorization. For some stupid reason, some insurances still want me to fax it rather than email it or fill it out online and be done with it faster. So how do we get this done faster? Because I don't want my provider wasting their time with this. Let's say I got to do something for a patient that's ADA, hey, American Disabilities Act. They need an accommodation.
Mhm.
How long is that going to take for my provider to fill out? And how much of that information is really necessary for the provider to fill out rather than someone else? Because the medical record should be backing up the decision no matter what. And we're seeing the patient, regardless of the ADA requirement or request. The ADA requirement request usually comes after the diagnosis, not before. Some
Right.
patients are clever and try to swing it in before. No, 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 no. You need the diagnosis, then do it that way. It does that way, things don't look fishy. Like you're just chasing the disability. So but when we look at cybersecurity, it's the same thing. How do we optimize our workflow? What's the workflow look like? I hate doing it, but it's something that I do in our practice. I will sit there at least twice a year and I will say, okay, from initial contact with the patient, hit me with everything we have to do and how we are currently doing it. And I will literally go and try to break the system. Well, how can I screw this up? Well, how can I do this? Well, how can I do that? And we had a conversation in the office, which I absolutely just threw gasoline on just to see what my people would come up with in regards to, we are moving as virtually as possible. And since we do have questionnaires because we're mental health, we do let the patients fill them out from home rather than coming to the office an hour early. And depending on them showing up an hour early to fill out the paperwork,
Or
so our
last
providers can
minute.
take a look at it so we
Mhm.
can stay on time, right? So we go and say, hey, we will send it to you electronically. You can fill it out. Boom.
And that's
Now,
going to
one thing,
email or text message or
so we send it by email because it's all of the paperwork, right? So
gotcha.
it's the PHI, it's the initial patient paperwork,
Mhm.
it's all the notice of
So
privacy
it's
practice.
electronic fillable. document.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
electronic
got it.
fillable where they can print it out from home and they can fill it out by hand.
Got it.
Care how they do it. What I don't want is for them to email it back to us, filled out with information.
Makes sense.
Like
Is it
I can send it to you, and there's no issue here because it's empty. It's a
now
blank piece of paper.
when you tell them that you don't want them to send it back, how do you notify them of that? Is that over phone? Is
So
that
we send it in the email, and when we have the
a
conversation with the patient initially, hey, we're going to send you this paperwork. Just do us a favor, don't email it back to us
you just
because
I'm
we'll
just
either
thinking
set
it's
up.
the human element, Did they read
Yeah,
that?
so
They
I
they get the
can't tell you
paperwork.
how
Oh,
many
I'm gonna
times
fill it out. I'll send it
they
back.
do it anyways. Oh yeah, yeah, they'll
Yeah,
do it anyways, and then we'll be like, look, you need to be aware that when you send that back to us, even though it's point to point,
right.
even though our email is secure, theirs may not be.
Yeah. No,
Hey,
absolutely.
what's my
They might
email?
be
Well,
sending it from
Bobby
the
Joe
Starbucks down the road.
91 at hotmail.com.
Right.
Hotmail? How long you had this email? 20 years?
The
When was the last
AOL,
time you think they changed their password on that email?
AOL or AIM.
Yeah,
You gotta
yeah.
have those in
When
the
do you
mix.
think was the last time they, you know what I mean? Like, so, but this goes to the entire situation of how is everybody getting hacked? Because it's something as simple as that.
Well, that and like I said, they could be at a Starbucks on an open Wi-Fi connection, you know?
Yes, luckily most people have gotten a little bit more attuned to that one. How I've seen other people mess up is okay, cool. I will set up my own hotspot, but then because of laziness, when they set
They
up
don't
their own
set a
hotspot,
password.
they don't put a password on their own bloody hotspot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though if you go to just the defaults, anybody who's done this before knows this, so I'm not saying anything that's a top secret tip. A lot of cell phones will just have the default password being the phone number to the phone.
Yep.
So it'll be, oh, what's the password? Okay, 904-555-1234.
You gotta
I
add a
mean, it's
you gotta add a level there. You gotta add another
well, I
layer.
mean, but at least on that scenario, right? Someone has to either ask you for your phone number. So that means that they would already know you or you've already given them permission,
Right.
or that they were already into your phone anyways, and then at that point it doesn't really matter because they're already in your phone.
Done at that point.
Right, so I
Dunzo.
mean, we go to I don't care who you are, right? I'm as guilty of this as I know my employees are because we are human. If I am in the middle of working and my phone pings and it looks like an urgent email that I need to address for some reason. I mean, it's hurricane season right now. I actually went and got a couple of emails. I don't know if you got these, right, in regards to flood insurance and hurricane
I've gotten
insurance and water
letters,
damage
gotten
and my
emails.
roof.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's my problem? I actually do have a property. I
Right.
actually do have insurance on my property. I actually do have, I thought I had flood damage, but I just have water damage, which is a whole nother bag of tricks. But, anyways, the point is, it was urgent and it actually made sense for it to be urgent. And it was something that I was like, okay, crap. Let me just take a look at this real quick to see what it is.
Sure.
Got me.
What'd you do? Fill out an
Is
online?
that I mean, it's not like I guarantee you it's not like that employee was on freaking Temu or Wish or TikTok on their laptop. You know what I mean? Like it could have been something as completely benign. Now there's ways to go and you can limit this with the use of IT and company devices saying, "Hey, you can't access these sites," right?
Right.
But let's go ahead and set up another scenario. I got 365 in the office. And because I am just tech savvy enough, so I'm tech literate more than tech savvy, I know how to combine my emails into one screen. Well, ladies and gentlemen, guess what we did? all the emails get forwarded to this one screen. So let's say I have a Comcast email, because Comcast is a dumb company, and every time you're a client of theirs, makes you get an email just for them. And then you have AT&T, because
That's
you
why we
drop
don't have
Comcast because
Comcast.
Comcast sucks.
Go
Then you
T-Mobile.
have your work email, and then you have your personal email. And you decide, hey, these are a lot of emails. I want to get them all in one place. You get them all forwarded. This is where you have that problem.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So it's like, geez, I mean, let's say I'm using a work laptop, which is even worse. Why? Because if I take the work laptop home with me and I'm doing work from home, which is very common, especially for mid-levels,
Very
traveling
much so.
providers,
I
owners of
would
practices.
I
Go
would
ahead.
say I would say this is one of those risks of smaller practices. I feel like a lot of smaller practices take their, I would say more so than larger healthcare
So,
organizations,
so yes and
take their
no.
work home.
So yes and no. It would complete. I would say I agree with you in the respect that smaller practices will go and buy laptops more, because you have smaller, especially with all the nonsense from COVID. We still have all our laptops from when people were working from home because they had COVID, but they were feeling fine. So we were set up to work remotely completely, that was an interesting scenario. But one of the issues is, if I have this laptop, and even if it's assigned to me from work, there are those times that I'm like, oh, this is my laptop, and I may not think about it, and I just go and do whatever. Um, I can't tell you how many times I've had a couple of people that have said, hey, so I know I just left the company. Did you wipe that laptop yet? There's some stuff that I need to get from there.
Oh,
Because they could have
they
saved their password because they
use
paid
it
their
for their
mortgage on
personal.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they paid their mortgage on there. Or hey, I was working on my doctoral dissertation or a research paper while I was also working on something else for you guys. This stuff
Should know better.
happens, and but they do know better, right? But it's just one of those things where they're not meaning anything bad by it. It's again, it's the thing where
It's
it's
convenience.
not even negligent, it's just not paying attention,
Yeah.
right? So how do we avoid that, right? So you have the cynical method would be, hey, every device, you tell IT, you only let them have access to these websites. You only put on the web browser that you have all of your protections on, and you only let them get to the 4 websites they need, right? Like here in Florida, it'd probably
EMR.
be the EHR,
Yeah.
the
Appointment
email for your
scheduler.
work, Availity if you're in billing or if you're in the front desk, and then maybe e-forces, because you got to run e-forces if you're doing class twos in the office,
What about
right?
you?
So I mean,
You're telehealth, so you gotta have what? You gotta have Zoom access,
no, I mean, we don't
or is
have
that
to
only
have Zoom, but
that's
a
only
Zoom
the
wouldn't be a
provider?
bad one. But whatever telehealth tool, whatever video conferencing tool that you're using in the office, obviously that one's got to be in there. But you're looking at like 5 or 6 things, where most laptops, most computers now, they're set up as, you can set them up as apps, right? Because of the way the
Sure.
new Windows operating system is, everything is an app instead of a program, or whatever terminology they want to use, right? So you can hyper, hyper limit what the employees have access to on that side. Then you can have the other limit of, hey, the password for the work Wi-Fi is just one of those 20-digit alphanumeric random ass word that looks more Cyrillic than English. Like it's just
Hmm.
gobbledygook that no one is ever going to remember. And you do that on purpose with your IT, so that way the only way that a device is getting on there is if, one, the employee has enough technical savviness
Technical
to look up
savviness.
what the
Yeah.
password is, or two, they got the password from IT, which IT should never give that password out. Then, if you're going to be that hardcore, this is difficult in a scenario like a sniff or an ALF. And I go back to those because Florida, we have a lot of those, and we have a lot of providers that go in and out.
Hmm.
So, hey, all right, cool. I'm a specialist. I'm actually working on something with a SNF right now. All right. What does that mean? That means that my providers are going to be going in and out of that SNF. That means that I need access to the Wi-Fi in order for my provider to be able to do his notes at the time of the visit, which is what the insurances want, right? And which is what honestly I want. I don't want my providers working until 9 o'clock at night doing notes.
Doing notes after the
That
fact.
nonsense. That
That's
nonsense is wild. And honestly, it's not that kind of a business environment anymore. So, and the
not
kind
ideal.
of providers that will do that now, they're of a certain age that they just have been doing it for so long, they don't know any better. Right. So,
Absolutely. I can
I mean,
speak
it's
on
just the
that
way that it
firsthand.
goes.
Yeah.
You don't have I mean, you don't have a large quantity of providers under the age of 55 that would be waiting to
Fair.
do their notes at the end of the day, and they'll sit there till 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock to do the notes and then leave. You
Right.
just don't have that anymore. But anyway, so um if I'm going in and out, then if I'm an ALF or a SNF where I have a scenario where providers are coming in and out all the time, then what I will probably do, what I would do is set it up to where you have sadly three Wi-Fi not systems, but just setups,
Network
right?
IDs.
So huh?
Network IDs. What's
Yeah, three
points of
Wi-Fi
access?
networks.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, three Wi-Fi networks, right? So you have the one for the employees that are completely internal organization owned. Then you have a second one that is all of the providers coming in and out. And
Okay.
then you have the third one for the patients and the employee patients and patients' families and employee personal devices. That's the way I would set it up. And that's not hard to do, especially if you're an ALF or SNF where you already have to have all that bandwidth and network set up anyways. It's really not that much more for an IT company to set it up to be three different networks.
I was gonna
Um,
say if you're a smaller practice, right, and
if I'm a one provider
maybe
shop,
I was gonna say maybe you don't have the budget for an IT person, right? Then
you're so
I guess you're just jack of all
let's
trades.
so let's go down. You asked the question, so let's go down the road, right?
Sure.
What can I do out of the box as a single provider, dual provider office, including the providers? Maybe there's 8 employees.
That's fair.
Okay. My budget's extremely tight. Why? Because maybe we're generating 20 to 30, 20 to $40,000 a month. Okay. That sounds like a lot to someone who doesn't look at the numbers, but when you start really taking a look at what things cost, that's not that doesn't stretch you very far, right? So anyways, so one thing that you can do if I was to absolutely bare bones this, I do not recommend it. I do not condone it. I understand it, but I don't like it. And it should be extremely temporary. With all those caveats said and hopefully understood, you need to have at least like Norton antivirus on everything, which is easy for you to buy. Now, there is a difference between doing a Norton antivirus or McAfee or whatever any of those antivirus companies are. There's a difference between the home version and the commercial version. You're going to have to take a look.
Sure.
If you've got brand new devices, if I'm opening doors today, right, Ray?
Yeah.
I need to have policies and
This is
procedures.
for those, by the way, this is for those that maybe just this was oversight, right? Like, oh crap, I need an IT person, but I can't afford it. But we're here. You know what I
So
mean?
yeah. So okay, so let's say I started last year, or let's say I even just didn't even think about it, and I started at the tail end of COVID. So we're looking at 22, yeah, mid 22, late 22, early 23, right? I see all this stuff with change. I see all this stuff with ascension, and I'm like, oh crap. I've got a turtle head poking out. We got to handle this, right? So let's handle this. First thing I would do is I would call every IT company in the area. A lot of times you may not even need to actually call them if you've been doing any kind of networking, if you have any of your employees that have been around in the area,
Sure.
they'll have a couple of people in mind. You call them, you say, hey, what is my basic MSO price, right? Managed services, right? Because a lot of times what these IT companies are doing is that they're white labeling complete antivirus, anti-malware, anti-phishing, all that stuff, and they can bundle it for very, very cheap. Now, there's a markup there that they will have, and depending on your markup and the company and all that fun stuff and the people they're targeting, they may be a good fit, they may not be. But then you have to have the conversation within yourself. How much is the antivirus by itself with me and my credit card every month? Versus how much is it to have these guys passively monitoring plus having all of these other pieces? That if something happens, I can go and say, hey, fix it, which
Right.
also helps. Some of them with their basic MSO packages or with just like one level more can do a lot of remote help. So when you're having issues, they can remote in and they can handle it without you having to pay for the tech to come on site, which is also very useful if I'm in a rural area or if I really don't have that many people from home, that many people in my area, and I have providers working from home and all that fun stuff, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But you still got to train your employees. You still got to
The
go and
bottom line.
explain and make
Yeah.
it fun for them and say, hey, how do you guys understand how easy this is for somebody to do this? Like now we all know the whole, hey, if there's a prince from Nigeria who wants to send you some cash because he's got a bunch of cash coming in, but you got to send him some cash or some banking information so that way he can send it. Enough of us have gotten caught by that. Enough of us have been on the news that we know don't do that, and here is why. Right. So, I mean, I can't tell you. I still get some of those emails because I still have to look through spam because some of my filters are so strong that some of my vendors end up in my spam. So I still
That
have to look at my
happens.
spam box, at least once every couple days just to make sure I'm not missing out on important emails. Which then I'm like, oh my God, there's another Nigerian prince. How many princes are there in Nigeria? What in the world is going on over there? Like, so I mean,
No
it's just a
cybersecurity threats
matter.
over there.
It's just a matter of like, we got to use a little bit more common sense. And I
Right.
like having these conversations with the employees because then I can get to sit back as someone who is financially and legally incentivized to make sure this stuff is correct. I can sit back and see, okay, which one of my employees are engaged in the conversation, which ones are not. I can sit back and say, okay, cool. Are they correct? And maybe I want to shift our organizational philosophy to reflect the consensus here, or are they wrong and maybe we need to adjust here and here and here? But these are all things that I can do not by actively engaging in the conversation, but by literally throwing the grenade in the middle of the group and seeing who does what.
Well, let me ask you this, Jose, because
Mhm.
a company like EPICompliance, right? One of the aspects of our system is online training for staff, right? HIPAA,
Mhm.
privacy, and security training. Is that enough, or
No,
is there going
no,
to
God, no.
be
It's actually even in the protocols and procedures, you gotta look at the federal government says that there needs to be periodic training. That doesn't
right?
mean monthly, that doesn't mean weekly, that doesn't mean biannually or annually. Periodic can be defended in a lot of different ways by savvy attorneys. However, attorneys are expensive, therefore I don't want to involve them unless I have to.
Hmm.
So I like to use the example of, hey, let's use the carrot, let's use the stick, and let's use gossip. I'm in the South. My office is half women, So the women that I have they do like to gossip. They are very heavily involved in each other's lives and everybody else's lives. So I'm going to leverage that. The guys I have in my office, they do not care about the gossip, which actually makes it a very nice working environment because then they're not inner fighting. But they don't care about the gossip. They only care about the shenanigans. So
I
I
see where
have to
this is
go and be
going.
like, hey, did you see what happened with Ascension? Like I did that with because we're in St. Augustine. Ascension is literally 40 minutes away from us,
Yep.
the closest location. So I was like, hey, did you see what happened with Ascension? They're like, no. And then I tell them, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I bet you, same like you and I had. I was like, I bet you it was somebody doing something stupid with their personal email.
Hmm.
And I can't tell you, I caught one of my employees moving his mouse to get rid of his personal email.
You
Like,
found the
but
culprit. You found a potential culprit.
well, I mean, it just happened to be him that time,
Right.
right? So it's just a matter of I've got to make this fun. I got to make this to where they understand that every action they do, I hate to put it that much, but every action they do in the internet 2.0, in the internet.com, in the internet of things has an outcome for us.
No, absolutely.
Like it's almost as bad as again, small town. Um, I've told my employees I can't tell you what to do when you're not here, but if you're gonna go out to a restaurant or bar for happy hour or for outings, I would prefer you don't have our name on your clothes. Because if something happens, it's only the negative things that hit the news. It's never the positive, right?
Of
So
course.
I would just prefer to not have Channel 4 News coming to my door on a
News for
Monday
Jags.
morning first thing and be like, hey, so we have video of one of your employees out at da 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 this past weekend. Do you have a comment? And I'm like, I'm not even awake yet, and you want me to comment? No, So, but it's just that same kind of thing. We're in a small town, so everything you guys do reflects upon us positively and negatively. But sadly, there are more possibilities for it to be negative than positive. So having those frank conversations with the team is far easier and far more productive. Um, If I was to go, and I've seen this too, I hate this one too. A lot of times, especially new hires, if they start out working from home and there's an issue with the work device, they're real quick to ditch the work device and use the personal device.
Nah, I've seen that firsthand. Yeah.
And that's a problem,
Yeah.
a major, major problem, right? Um, we can't have that.
Mm-mm.
And if I hear an employee is doing that, I panic. And I did have one provider that I did have to sit down with, and I said, "Look, you can't do that. You are an employee, therefore I have to provide you the device. If the device is not working, your SOL, your butt needs to come to the office." That's not something I want to do, but ish happens. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
we got to handle our business correctly. Because what's another thing that a lot of our employees like to do, and it's not even our employees, it's my wife does this all the time too. She yells at me, "Why don't you just save the password? It gives it gives you the thing to just save the password right there. I don't want it
But
to save my password.
better
What
yet,
defeats the
write
point
it
of
on a sticky
password?
note.
It defeats the point of putting in a password if you let your browser remember it.
Yeah.
And again,
It's
I'm
convenience.
seeing the
Convenience is
emojis
the
pop up.
killer. That's the moral here. Convenience.
It's just, I mean, it's the ability to be lazy
You can
is
call it
allowing for
laziness.
for the overall common denominator to reduce to obnoxious levels.
Right.
If I could turn that off on every device, I would. I just don't know how because I'm only tech literate. I'm not tech savvy.
Might be a Google thing. You got to switch a
I
setting off. It's got it. You got to.
Sure. I
Maybe.
I
I
mean,
don't know.
but that's a common thing. I mean, just think about it on your personal device. How many passwords are pre-populate when you go to that website?
At least 5 or 6 at the top of my head,
Now, Ray,
easily.
let's use you as the example since you're the one saying it, right? You know what that means, right? It means that you have cookies on your browser.
Yep.
So
But storing,
your IP address is a known IP address to log on with these credentials, which means that the second someone gets access to your computer, all they got to do is look at your history. Oh, what bank does Ray use? Click. Oh, what credit card does Ray use? Click. Oh, hey, there's his Amazon. Click.
that's,
Now I have
it's funny
all your
because
banking
several of the ones
information.
you mentioned are, yeah.
Well, I mean,
But
it's
I will say
not only
this.
that.
Here's what I do. At least as far as my banking stuff is concerned, I will reset my password at least once a year.
It doesn't matter
Doesn't matter. Yeah, I
because if
know.
you save it, it's still gonna. Anybody that has access to your computer now has access to those passwords.
So
All
what are
they
you
got to do is go to the history and be like,
suggesting,
"Oh,
Jose?
you have a mortgage with Bank of America. Oh, he has a credit card. He has two credit cards, one with Capital One, one with Chase. Oh, look at that. He just saved the passwords on all three of them. Oh, look at that. His Amazon cart is open. I know exactly what he has on his wish list. Delete all that, change the address, and thank you for Amazon Prime, Ray. It's just
It's that
that
what
easy.
it is. It is. And well, let me ask you this. So, you know, talking about the
I hope I'm not scaring the crap out of
not
everybody.
about my personal stuff. That's fine.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I get your point. It's that easy. And yes, it is. And but going back to comparing large healthcare organizations to the smaller, right?
Yep.
So large healthcare organizations, uh, there's more employees. That makes them more, target to these hacks, right?
Yep.
Especially
So let's use change as an excuse for
change
this,
in
right?
ascension. Yeah, yeah,
Yep. Let's use there's no reason why change should not have had multi-factor authentication on everything.
right.
Because there's no way you can tell me that Change Healthcare can't afford it. Because by extension, you're telling me that United Healthcare can't afford it.
Which is that the largest conglomerate
Yeah,
in the US?
it's the largest insurance. I believe it's the largest or second largest insurance in the U.S. right now.
I would like to think
Now,
that they can
if I'm
afford
a
it.
small office, now think about it like this: if I'm a small office with again 10 employees maximum, everybody's cross-trained. So there's no way that you can have, okay, well, only you have access to the billing stuff. Only you have access to this part of the EHR. No, somebody's sick, somebody's on vacation. Oh, we're moving everybody around. It's musical chairs in there. At
Right.
Change,
Turnover's
that's not
high.
happening.
Yeah.
At Ascension, that's not happening. If you got somebody in finance, they don't touch anything in procuring. They don't touch anything on the clinical side.
Right.
If you're on the clinical side, you're not touching, any of that stuff. If you're on the clinical side in a hospital, you're not touching the billing side. You know what I mean? So it's segregated naturally. But if you, there's no reason why you don't have multi-factor authentication on this stuff.
No,
There's no
it's
reason why you shouldn't have passwords on your devices.
right.
Which
Common
I see all
sense,
the time.
which is just
Which
nuts
I
for
see all the time.
a large organization like that. Obviously, with Ascension Health, but
I mean, I've seen it right now. We're in 2020. We're halfway through 2024. We did an SRA for a specialist group that puts their devices in each exam room. So when the patient comes in, the provider comes in, just unlocks the computer and just goes.
right.
One of their providers couldn't even be freaking bothered to log out of the computer or log out of the EHR. What are we doing?
I
What are you
guess
doing?
that
So you mean to
I
tell me
guess
that if
I
I
get
wanted any information on any of your patients, you just went just I'm just gonna leave the EHR
I just go
open.
around
All
the
they gotta do
counter.
is move the mouse.
Wow. I guess they're well again laziness, right? Laziness. And I would assume that some of these people may think that there's some sort of automatic log off, which there is, but you have to put those in place. And,
You have to
there's a
train on them. You got to
timestamp
put
on
them in
that. There's a
place.
timestamp of when that is the automatic log
Yup.
off. It could be 5 minutes, it could be 10 minutes, it could be an hour, who
I mean,
knows?
you can, so for a lot of the computers, you can set them up, and a lot of the EHRs, you can set them up. They all have defaults. Usually it's like 5 minutes of
Right.
inactivity, they log you out.
Yeah.
But if your provider is going
Still
to be
enough time if
lazy,
you exit the room. That's plenty of time
are
to,
you kidding me? Do you know
that's,
what a patient can do in 45 seconds of
yeah.
nobody watching them in an exam room?
Yeah.
Anybody in the field, in the trenches, they can put some stories in,
Yeah.
right? Like it's just wild what they can do. You cannot have that. I mean, if your provider is going to be that lazy, I honestly told the office manager and the HIPAA security officer, I was like, look, you need to just set up your devices to where 30 seconds of inactivity, it's not that it logs you out of the EHR, it logs you out of the computer.
Yeah.
Then they can't access anything. They can wiggle the mouse around, and as long as they don't know the password, you're good to go. So please don't make it exam room one. You know,
Yeah.
don't make it the number on the door, exam one, exam two. Um, but it's these common sense type things that are the most dangerous because it's the lowest common denominator. It's easier to hack a person than it is to hack a device that's properly protected. It just
So
takes less time.
smaller, obviously when it comes to smaller practices, keeping up with these changing cybersecurity threats. I mean, where do you start? I mean, I would say,
So as your IT, or if you're IT, if you have IT, as they're setting up on every device, the antivirus and anti-malware and all that fun stuff, and the passive monitoring, you need to be going over with your employees the importance of this stuff. Because yeah, they'll do the annual training, and yeah, they may be better than most and know where the policies and procedures are, and they may be able to tell you some of that stuff, but they got to know the why. They gotta give a crap. They gotta be, you know, have a strong enough sense of shame, fear, or gratitude to not do something stupid.
I would add, don't let your ego get the best of you either, because I have talked to smaller practices, and I'm sure you've dealt with this. That think that, oh, I'm the small guy.
I'm a small guy.
I'm
This
not
won't
at
happen to
risk.
us.
It's not going to happen to me. I got a
Yeah.
small target, or no target.
I want to say that there was one that was like a two provider office that recently hit the news. They had 5,000, 6,000 patients that were affected by a breach on their end.
They were probably those people. You
I
know,
mean,
I
it's
I, I
easy to do. It's easy to do. Now, on a legal side, can I defend certain things? Absolutely. I don't
sure.
have the same level of resources as Ascension or Change. So as long as I can show that, hey, we have policies and procedures, we trained on them, this happened outside of. We had a client that something like this happened, and it was actually on the fault of the IT because they were updating something with the server because they went server based, even though it's cloud based. It's a whole convoluted mess. Point of the story is that the IT downloaded on the update patch, within that update there was some malware in there that they didn't know about, so they were trojan horsed, and they were the ones that actually were at fault.
Hmm.
But the practice is the covered entity.
Yeah.
So
There's
how did we prove that? Well, I want to say they spent about 60,000 dollars worth of
see,
legal fees, because the federal government does not care.
and they still stayed in business. Good
They
Lord.
still stayed in business currently. This
For a small
they're on
practice,
year three.
that's a lot of
They're
money.
still on, I think they're on year three of this nonsense.
Oh,
But they're still in business. Last I checked, they were on 60,000 dollars worth of legal fees. We knew that the fine, even though it wasn't on them, was still going to carry a comma and be we've been guessing it was going to be the price of one provider a year.
Okay.
So we're expecting to see that when the fine comes down, it could be anywhere between $300,000 to $600,000. And then whatever happens to the vendor, the IT people, which could be another $300,000 to $500,000, which depending on the IT company could put them out of
Was
business.
there any
I don't think that
BA?
one it
Was
would
there
have
any
put them out
BA
of
in
business.
place?
So what?
Was there any BA in place? Any business associate
They
agreement?
did have a they had a soft, very, very soft BA from the IT company,
Okay.
but it doesn't matter.
From
The
the
covered
IT
entity is
company.
still going to get hit.
Sure.
It's just
Sure.
instead of it being $1 million fine, it's only half that.
Well, at
Because
least
they're gonna
they, at
split it 50-50 with the
least there
IT
was some
company.
sense.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
mean,
it doesn't seem like much because you're still buying a house, but hey,
listen, a
it's
small practice, that's a lot of money. That is a
I mean, a
lot of
small
money.
practice wouldn't have that. But
Yeah, no.
remember, any violation of HIPAA security, the minimum fines, they start at 50,000 per.
Right. Right. For simple stuff. I mean, training,
Per.
ongoing
That's the
training,
problem. Is that
policies
it's not just that it's a 50,000, it's a 50,000 per.
per. Yeah. Yeah. Like
So
I
when
said,
you
that
have 2,000 patients, because that's one full-time provider that could have been affected, not even proven affected, but could have been affected, because that's always the verbiage used, because you never really know how far they get in. Times 50,000, you're looking at what? A mil?
close to it. Yeah.
I think 50K times 2,000. No, that
Yeah.
might be more than that. No, that might be a mil, right?
Yeah, that's a mill. It's a mill.
Only. I mean, don't worry about your student loans provider.
They'll be paying
And then
that off
thanks
for
to
the
the
rest of us.
PPACA, now that's criminal.
Yeah.
So you want it to be from one of your vendors, honestly. If I'm a covered entity, I want to push the blame onto the vendors, just so that
Oh,
way
in
I
this
stay out of the
scenario,
orange
absolutely.
jumpsuit.
At all costs. I mean, you get that license taken away, then what? You know?
I mean,
Ah,
shoot, if I'm the HIPAA
what?
security officer, I don't want to go to jail.
No, no, that's true. No.
So
I'm thinking of
yeah, so I
the
mean,
small time. They don't even have a security officer. It's the practitioner.
yeah,
Does it all.
yeah. So I mean, if I'm a small office, if I'm a medium office, common sense is a superpower. Address the elephant in the room. If you think that there's something that's not worth going over because it's so basic, go over it anyways. Trust me. You'll be shocked and amazed by the higher end concepts that everybody's aware of, but they forget the lower end concepts that are just as important and foundational.
Well, I would say for smaller practices that are looking to, prioritize their investments and obviously focus on cost effectiveness, especially with compliance. EPICompliance is your answer. I mean,
You gotta have policies and
it's gonna
procedures.
provide a baseline. It's gonna give you
Yeah, you
exactly.
gotta have policies and procedures, and you gotta train anyways. So why
Yes.
even try to put together a training program if I don't have to? Just that alone just makes it worth working with a company like.
And the business associate agreements on top of it. I
That's
mean,
a
you gotta have a
bonus.
baseline, and that
The
is
monthly reminders are a bonus,
yeah,
but again, it's just any one of those things wouldn't be worth my time as an office manager. I've got too much other crap to deal with.
it's true. You already the firefighter.
Just yeah, yeah. So the fact that larger companies are falling to the easy stuff is kind of impressive in its stupidity, but
It's really things that would happen at the smaller scale, which is just
you
crazy.
would think,
Well, yeah.
but I would bet you would have an inverse relationship down the road when this stuff gets sorted out. I wouldn't be surprised if there's an inverse relationship where the larger the company, the simpler the mistake, and the smaller the company, the larger the infrastructure is just screwed up because it's just not set up properly.
So just you would argue that smaller companies have too many things going.
I would
or
argue that smaller companies can't, again, they
because they're
don't
lacking
have
the
the funds to go after the
right,
higher end concepts,
right,
but they can cover the basics.
yes,
So they don't screw up the basics because it's the only thing they cover.
right,
The larger companies are screwing up basic stuff because they're focused on the bigger stuff. So,
makes sense.
yep,
Well, the
it's
bottom
just
line
having
is,
conversations.
yeah, no, the bottom line is either way, you're the smaller guy or the larger guy, you got to have something in place. Bottom line.
Yep, have something in place, test it, test your team. I mean, again, I can't tell you how many times I'm talking to other office managers and I give them an example of something funny or good that my team did, or they'll give me something and I go back to my team and say, hey, what would you guys have done here?
Right. I would
Learn
say
from somebody else's mistake.
access controls, right? You know,
Yeah. But learn from somebody else's mistake. You don't have to make them all. It's okay. You can
right.
skip a few of them.
Or all of them if you can help it.
Yeah, right. But
But
if you've got any further questions, anybody's got any deeper questions, you guys can definitely contact Ray and myself, and we're more than happy to jump into it with you on a more specific level. Um, and even
yeah,
so much so that we can probably get you in touch with some people to help you out with your different vendors and needs. So, I mean, even take a look at how old your devices are. Is it time to upgrade? Just because whatever. But that's a whole nother philosophical difference in regards to all new devices or just rocking old ones till they crap out and then buy new ones and just keep going. But yeah, so uh
no,
what do
we're
we have on the what do we have next on the docket, Ray?
so next week, Jose, I don't know if you recall, but we interviewed Brad Ward some time ago with
Yeah,
the shred away stuff, and well, as of recent, Waste Management purchased Stericycle,
that's
which,
right.
as you know, is the one of the largest medical waste companies in the industry. I would say, I'd argue probably
Yeah,
probably the largest. But
yeah.
we're just gonna be talking about sort of what that means for smaller fish, in the med
Okay.
waste industry. So my
Shoot, I want to
title,
know what that's going to mean for a small office.
that too, that too.
Are my prices going to go up? Are my prices going to go down?
I think it's gonna change some things, and I think for the smaller companies, I think to survive, they're gonna have to offer more bundled services,
Yeah.
and so we'll be diving into that. For those of you who are on here, appreciate you guys joining in, and you guys will receive a registration link for that event. I said it earlier, but if you haven't already, please, 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 if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please give us a like. I did send the link in chat earlier. I'll do it again, and would appreciate that. All these recordings, they do go up on our YouTube channel after the fact, and we are going to be working on getting these on our Instagram and LinkedIn pages as well. So
Oh
stay
man,
tuned.
we're going to be clipping them now too. Oh
Yeah, we're
gosh.
going to be doing some reels and
Oh
shorts
no.
and all that good stuff. We're going to get, yeah,
I can
we're
only
gonna
imagine the stuff that's going to get
we're
clipped.
gonna have some good conversation in there. Looking forward to it. We'll get your lovely face, my lovely face. And yeah, no, the goal is to again, our goal here is to provide value to our customers or potential customers that are coming here maybe for the first time, and really just sort of getting, whether it's starting a new business or maybe you're a student and you're looking to learn more about compliance, and that's our goal. We want to provide value with these topics. And if you guys have any topics, certainly let us know. Very, very open book here. As long as it's healthcare related, compliance related, let us know. We'll certainly talk on it. But we'll leave this chat open just for another minute, just to see if anybody has any questions, concerns from today's session. Please feel free to put your questions in chat.
Yeah, so the easiest way for smaller practices that to keep up with the changing cybersecurity threats is just breathe in, breathe out, handle the basics.
establish that
Gotta handle the
baseline.
basics. Make sure you've got antivirus, make sure you've got anti-malware. If you have an IT company that is giving offering an MSO, grab it. If you think you have an IT company, but your bills are nothing a month with your IT company, you're on a break fix. Change that. Break fix contracts are no good for anybody. They're not good for the IT company. They're not good for you. That's why it's more expensive for you. Because then you're getting charged for anything that pops up. A lot of times with the MSO stuff, they'll give you a discount or they'll give you a certain amount of hours for remote takeover, remote fixes. So take a look and negotiate.
Do you pay monthly on that,
Smart
Jose, or you
in a
pay annual
say what?
for your IT? Do you pay annual or monthly, or is that even an
Monthly.
option?
I pay monthly. Smaller practice immediate response being the event of a suspected data breach. Well, luckily, if you have you have 60 days to report if it is large enough to report. If it's a smaller data breach, like the example Ray gave earlier with the practitioner, then you know about it right away. So it would really just be a matter of if I have passive monitoring, they're going to catch it right away.
Yeah.
If I have a situation where it's ransomware, don't worry, you're gonna know because they're gonna shut your systems down. If it's something
Why
to
is my
where,
why is my password not work?
yeah, why can't I log into anything on my device? What is happening, right? So
Must have been an eye opener
immediate
for Ascension.
response would be you go to your disaster emergency protocols while you figure out what in the world is happening, right? So that would be um switching to paper records if you have paper records. That would be switching to a paper schedule if you have a paper schedule. That would be contacting the pharmacies that you work with in case there are certain medications that they require now to be electronic, so you can work with them on a method that will not affect your patients, or at least limit the adverse effect to your patients. You don't want to contact your patients immediately because they will freak out. Contact your attorney or contact a healthcare consultant and your IT company so they can start diving into what in the world is happening. Because it could be something really bad, it could be something not nearly as bad, or it could be something that's not even a fault of your own. You may be panicking right now that you have a suspected data breach, but it's really your EHR that just went down because they did a bad update and it didn't carry over correctly the next morning. So you want to be pragmatic about your approach to dealing with it. You want to be like a duck on a pond, calm on above water, and then underwater you're paddling like crazy. But nobody knows it and nobody sees it. So
I
you
like
you
that
just want to,
analogy.
yeah, just got to keep calm. Just got to keep calm. And then if you do think that there is a data breach, you just got to figure out how many people are affected. A lot of times in a smaller practice, it's going to be an individual patient, or it's going to be a batch of patients. Let's say a bad employee. Let's say a provider or an employee sends a record to the wrong place or to the wrong person. So you can really handle that without an attorney, without having to report it, because it falls under a certain amount of lives.
I would
But you do
say
need to make things right.
I would add as well, if you are an EPICompliance customer, reach out to us. If you need some
Mhm.
direction, let us know. And
Yep.
depending on
Yep.
your situation, we can provide a point of reference and a plan of action on what to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So perfect. Any other questions?
Don't see anymore. We'll go ahead and close
Okay.
out, Jose. Jose, I appreciate your time as always. Look forward to seeing you
Hey,
next week. And again, for those that were on here today, appreciate your attendance. We look forward to seeing you in next week's session as well. And if you guys have any topics, any questions, just feel free to reach out to us. We're here to help.
absolutely. Thanks,
Thank,
guys.
thanks everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Jose. Talk to you soon.